everyone, and welcome back to episode 16. So, as usual, every month we're back with our Pureblu Spotlight. Hi, Manish, how are you doing?
Doing very well, Ajit. How are you? And it's so funny, every time we say, wow, we're doing episode 15, episode 16, it's just the numbers just keep on increasing, and it's just consistency that we're doing. So it's great.
Yeah, and in fact, I guess it's even more interesting because actually, when we started off doing the Spotlight, we was like, oh my God, would we even have that content to create? And it's like now every month now for 16 months nonstop, we've had great content. And in fact, a lot of it goes to most of you who actually write in, respond, and tell us what we can do. But for those guys who are joining us for the first time, Spotlight is less like a 30-minute session held every month, where we would like to share our thoughts on the three guiding pillars at Pureblu called RAP, which is reliability, accountability, and productivity. Well, at Pureblu, we have two product lines, which is a SaaS platform and easy-to-use software for air conditioning service providers to manage their customers' field resources, the trouble tickets, and the life cycle of the air conditioning and refrigeration systems. Our second product line is a smart AMC, where multi-city locations of all kinds of brands of air conditioning systems are managed as a one-stop solution under annual maintenance contract. Mind you, we are the only company who does that. This also gives you an IoT device free of cost as part of the AMC. Now, this device sends you daily reports on your energy consumption. And note that 70% of those energy consumptions in your premises comes from air cons. And a well-maintained air conditioning system can save close to 20% of your energy consumption. Now, as I said before, thank you for your inputs. And today we are going to talk about EV scooters for AC technicians. Are they really viable? And does it make sense to bring in EVs or electric vehicle scooters as part of your daily life, especially for that of an AC technician or an AC services company? So, Manish, I think you are the pro at this. You even run an YouTube channel called as Electric Avenue. So you do a lot of research around this. So tell us all about the EVs. Why is it everyone adopting EVs?
Yeah, so I run a YouTube channel I just started called Electric Avenue, and it talks about electric vehicles mainly around the four-wheelers in India. But because of all the research I'm doing, I kind of see what's happening on the two-wheel side, the three-wheel side, public transportation network, all of that. So the idea is, when we talk about EVs in India, everyone's like, oh, wow, cars, how many, when is Tesla coming to India? That's always the number one question. But the truth of the matter is last year, calendar year last year, 2022, over 1 million EVs were sold in India. That is a huge number. And of course, people say, but I don't see a lot of EVs. So when you look at the number one selling four-wheeler that is sold, it's the Tata Nexon. That is the number one selling EV. But so if you look at, and that was probably around 30,000 last year. So now if I just told you 1 million were sold last year and only 30,000 were cars, then the question is, well, then where did the other ones get sold? So that is the thing. That's what's interesting. In India, the EVs really are around the two-wheeler, the three-wheeler, and the transportation segment logistics, and also the buses. So if you look around in Bombay, and I'm sure other cities, you will see there are EV buses all over. And obviously it's to help with pollution. And of course, you'll always get the people that says, well, you're charging the EV using a infrastructure grid, that is electrical grid, that is powered by dirty coal. That is true. That is today. But the idea is at some point that we will go away from coal and we will move to other things that are cleaner burning or not burning at all. Like, let's say solar or maybe even wind energy, you never know. But you have to start somewhere. So I think that's where the government has said, let's focus on the end, which is the transportation side, the consumer side, the B2B side. And then once we get more adoption, then we can kind of build up the charging infrastructure. And then at some point, we can also look at, how do we, connect that to a solar grid, an energy grid that's, done by, let's say, like I said, windmill or water, hydrogen, all those different things. So that is really, when we talk about EVs in India, that is the main thing is two-wheelers and three-wheelers. And so when I say two-wheeler, three-wheelers, that is really the logistics companies, like, let's say, your delivery scooters. Also, there's like Rapido, these bike taxis, things like that. So that's really where a lot of these are getting consumed, because when you look at the overall total cost of ownership, it is amazing, the cost savings, because you don't have to have petrol or diesel anymore. You just have an EV. and the EV cost for electricity is much cheaper. But not only that, but it's very tough to have pilferage, with electricity versus it's very easy if, someone takes the scooter to a petrol pump and they put in a couple liters and they may take a couple liters. That is all, possible. But with, electric, it's not there. So the total cost of ownership is very low for an EV. You may have to spend a little bit more to get the EV, but then overall, it's very, very inexpensive. And that's really what's driving this revolution is it's also a different way of thinking. And we'll get to that. But overall, the EV scene is just beginning. I can see the government is doing as much as they can to kind of, there was just an announcement in Jammu and Kashmir, there was a lot of lithium was found, and lithium is one of the main ingredients for batteries. And we have a lot of it, in very, very close to us. So that's also going to help the production of batteries in India. So all of that is kind of helping India kind of go down the path of, moving towards an electric platform, mobility platform that people talk about. So you've got companies such as Ola Electric. So of course, Ola started as a cab aggregator trying to compete against Uber. But since then, they have just gone crazy with their Ola electric scooter that's doing very well. And of course, they've got teething issues, as anybody building a real product will have issues, and they're getting through it. And the one thing that they've got on the horizon that they keep on teasing the public is they're going to come out with a 4-wheel car very soon. That, if that happens, will be, well, I shouldn't say if that happens. It's definitely going to happen. The question is, when will it happen? I think that will be a great trendsetter for India, because then all of a sudden, we will have, a lot more manufacturing happening. So if we have the batteries are manufactured in India, we've got the technology, we've got all of that, we can kind of bundle it. And then hopefully it'll be great to see maybe an Ola car, in another country. So that's really why people are moving towards EVs. Is bottom line is the lower total cost of ownership, TCO.
But you touched upon on these cost saving. Can you go into a little more of the details on the cost versus a petrol versus an EV scooter?
Yeah. So I think we've got an image you want to share. If you bring it up, I can kind of go through it. So, this is a very good image that kind of talks about, this is the running cost. So it's assuming you've bought the electric scooter or you've bought a petrol 2-wheeler. I'd say the biggest thing you want to take a look at is your daily running cost. If you look at this petrol 2-wheeler, the daily running cost is around 250 rupees, and that's based on how many kilometers you're driving, and then how much is the fuel cost. I mean, this is at 100 rupees a liter. I actually think it's closer to 112 rupees right now. But anyways, this is, based on that, you're going to spend about 250 rupees a day just to run your 2-wheeler. And if you do the same sort of setup on an electric, you actually get a better range. You almost get 100 kilometers on a charge. And, that is, if you look at the average cost right now per unit for each kilowatt that you would use, kilowatt hour, is 10 rupees. And so if you use 2, that's about 20 rupees a day. So right off the bat, you're saving about 230 rupees a day. You multiply that by 30 or, 24, let's say you're working, 6 days a week, and you've got a running cost of around 6,000 for a petrol versus a little under 500 for an electric. And then you multiply that out over 3 years, and you can kind of see the cost savings. So if you look at the total cost, this is of ownership. This is obviously not the total cost of including the scooter. So the total cost over the 3 years of the ownership part of just running it would be 2.5 lakhs for a petrol versus 25,000 for an electric. So right off the bat, you can see why everyone is rushing towards, EVs in the logistics space, mobility space, because it's just so much better. And this is just one aspect of it. There are many other aspects that are, that are not quantified by just this money amount. There's also, you're saving, the environment at some point when everything will be, let's say, solar powered. Imagine, your entire grid is done by solar. Then, it's completely off the grid and it's completely free of any sort of pollution and all of that. So that's really what we're looking at is, the total cost of ownership, TCO, over 3 years. And here you can see it, very starkly that, you're almost spending almost 2.25 lakhs over 3 years above and beyond, what you would spend on electric. And that's really what everyone's, looking at. So, I've talked about a little bit about the EV side. the spending, the savings. But Ajit, from your perspective, how would you think, and how do you see these EVs fitting into an air conditioning, HVAC repair person? How would they use it? Is it something that you would even think of, or is it just a little bit still too out there? Maybe in a couple of years we'll take a look at it. What's your thought on that?
So, Manish, I think it's not going to happen in the future. It's going to happen quickly because the savings are very, very clearly evident. So typically, what would happen is, a technician, if you really look at his day, his majority of the time goes in traveling. So giving him a personal vehicle makes a lot of sense. Forget about whether it is an EV or a petrol or anything. Just giving him a two-wheeler is just perfect, right? I mean, you've seen the Swiggies, you've seen the Zomato guys. That is the driving force. So giving him a vehicle just makes sense. What happens because of that? He attends more number of calls. He's more on time, and a little modification to the carrier at the back of that two-wheeler can also help him carry some of his important tools. Because when he's using the public transport system to move around, these tools can become really a little bit of a hindrance, as to where you can carry them, if it's a crowded place. And these EVs become great, because not only are their costs very low, because any services business, you have to keep the costs low. So for an EV, just think about it. You're a two-wheeler to a technician, every technician. One is your productivity increases, you're able to do more calls, the technician comfort increases because he's now dependent on any public transport system. He's able to carry more tools, he's probably able to carry some spares, and the cost of operations come down because, as you rightly put it up in that sheet, it's just not marginal difference. It's a huge difference. And at one point of time with Pureblu, I don't know, maybe one day we'll just open our APIs for these EV platforms, and maybe we'll, on the dashboard itself, you can track what's happening onto the vehicle and what's happening on that front. Where is it? We can understand the routing process. Where are the traffic centers? So there could be a study which could be said as, these areas where the traffic is high, can you actually make sure that you tell the customers that, what, we're going to attend your calls only at this time. That way you make sure, you increased your productivity, but you still ensured great servicing and on-time servicing. So I think there are a lot of scope with this, with the low cost. And primarily, I want you to talk, when you're talking about you're talking about, of EVs, is all about geofencing. What is geofencing and what that means? Because that has a direct impact when an AC technician also uses an EV for his mobility for air conditioning, HVAC services. So let's hear a little about geofencing. What does that mean?
Sounds good. So, there's a couple of things we'll talk about. One is on the technology side and opening up new opportunities. And then we'll also talk about just some of because of the technology, we can do something very unique. So the first one we talked about, you mentioned, is geofencing. So that stands for geography fencing. So you can kind of create using a map. You can say, this scooter, and once you install an IoT device, an Internet of Things device on the scooter, and that graphic image we just saw, that's actually provided by a company called BeLive, and they've got this platform where they basically onboard all these scooters. They put on an IoT device, and then you can kind of say, this scooter specifically, let's call it scooter 123. Scooter 123 can only go around this 2-kilometer geofence. So an example of that would be, let's say you're in Bandra Kurla Complex, BKC, and there's obviously a lot of office buildings. There really is no need for any sort of vehicle or transportation to go outside that, let's say, 1 kilometer, 2-kilometer range. So you can actually say, this scooter is only locked to this region. And so this way it doesn't get out. So this way also the technicians know, I just need to kind of use it within this. So that's what geofencing means. And that is what's really great is, imagine, you have the Pureblu platform, you've got a bunch of different APIs. You can actually, just send out an API request to one of these platform providers and say, I need a scooter for this one, technician visit. And send it to them and just say, I need it for this amount of time in this area. So you can really kind of limit the scope of the use of that scooter for not only a duration, but also a location. And that's what's amazing about geofencing. So all these different use cases are coming up because you are using technology and you're using electric vehicles. Very difficult to do that with the petrol scooter. You can do what they call, kill switches, but that's very unsafe. And you're basically playing with, the fuel line, and that doesn't make sense. This is all obviously new technology with EVs, and it's much more easier to do. So that's an example of geofencing. Now, what is really interesting, I think, and I'll see this, I think this will happen soon, is, let's say you've got a really good technician of yours today, and you really want to give him some sort of bonus or, some additional. So, you may say, hey, I've given you a scooter to kind of do your technician visits, but maybe on a Sunday you can use it to do other things. The thing is, you don't really know what they're doing. They may give it to their friend. They may drive it really far. You have no idea. The thing is, imagine with an EV, you can kind of say, okay, this EV, this two-wheeler, I'm going to give to my technician, let him use it Monday through Friday, and he needs to do, let's say, X amount of visits per day. And let's say he exceeds that. So instead of doing X, he does 1.5X. So that's almost like a bonus of that he's doing. Then what you could say is, what? On Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to unlock this scooter so he can use it for those 2 days and however he wants to. And then you can, of course, track it and you can see what he's doing. And then let's say after Sunday evening, he comes back home. And then, of course, Monday morning, he starts. And then the following week, he only does 1X of his visits, So he does the standard that he's supposed to. But because he only does a standard, Saturday morning when he tries to start the scooter, it doesn't start, because it's geofenced, it's locked, because, he's not hit his performance targets. Now that thing will just sit there for 2 days. Now imagine if it's sitting there for 2 days, he's gonna be thinking, man, I wish I would have done that extra stuff so then I can get it going, because it's just standing there. So these are the different use cases that I can see coming up, So you can actually give a scooter to someone, and if they perform, they can use it. If they don't perform, it just sits there, and you don't have to worry about it, being pilfered or someone taking out all of, the petrol and selling it. None of that's there. It's all, all done via electricity, which is really, really good. So that I can see more and more use cases opening up. And I think that's the whole idea of EVs is going to open up things that we're not even thinking about today. We have no idea, and without these different ideas coming up, you don't know. And so whenever people tell me, oh, EVs are not that, they're not that energy, they're not that great for the environment as of now. And to some extent, maybe correct, but the way I look at it is, at least we're starting down the path, and then more things will open up. Now, imagine at some point, some of these vehicles may be, self-driving. Now, obviously, in a lot of our cities in India, having anything self-driving is very scary, no doubt. But imagine, you're in a very large campus, where, you've mapped out the roads, and, let's say you need to get some parts from warehouse A to, let's say, the campus, and that can all be done via electric vehicles that are autonomous, that can kind of go. And that's what the future brings you, and without the technology pushing it, you'll never get there. So even if you look at, petrol vehicles today, it's not happening. Even if you look at any petrol vehicle today, there's no way that they can do a lot of things that we're talking about. Now, a lot of people may feel this is all sci-fi, but I can tell you it's all about pushing the envelope and thinking differently. And that's what I think is great. I just had a conversation with someone a couple of days ago, and he was like, oh my God, EVs are really bad. There's a whole nother area coming up, hydrogen fuel cells, all of that. I said, you know what? I don't really care what wins. What I'm glad is that at least now we're not in that same rat race of petrol versus diesel, back and forth. Now we've got a whole new set of options coming up. One is electricity, one is hydrogen fuel cells, and now there'll be something XYZ. Who knows? There could be 2-3 kids in the middle of Madhya Pradesh that are coming up with something that I don't even know about. But the thing is, it's sparking everyone's imagination of how we can have alternate fuel sources. And that's the beauty of, electric vehicles. At least it's sparking everyone's idea. So that's kind of what I feel. That's a very long-winded answer to your geofencing question, but that's just one thing. Now there's a lot of other things coming up.
No, but I think that's very interesting, because see, from a servicing perspective, you are expecting the owner to actually invest in that EV. It's an asset of the company. Now, you need to keep track of those assets, because for a small services company, that's not a small asset. That's a very big asset. And then if you have more number of people, that asset can really become very big. And that's being used by so many people. And I think that's a great thing about incentivizing, that if you want to use your personal this, it's a nice way of incentivizing, where
Mhm.
the perceived value of that incentive is very, very large. And you still get to track as to who's using the machine, where is the machine, or where is the EV scooter, where is it lying. I think it's brilliant. I think that's a use case which is real. But one of the big questions that everyone keeps asking is, what about charging here? How do you actually make sure that these vehicles are charged? They take a long time to charge. How do you
Yeah.
actually, is that a hindrance, or how do you actually fix that as an issue?
No, that's a great question, and that's the biggest roadblock for anyone buying even an electric four-wheeler. Let's say is what they call range anxiety. Because you're used to putting in petrol in your car and going on a road trip, and then you'll find some other station and you can put in more petrol and continue your journey. So charging is a little bit different because the infrastructure is completely not there. And that's the reason why I feel like on the two-wheeler, four-wheeler logistics side, it's really taken off, because what ends up happening is, in the morning, they're probably being charged at the office or the compound where let's say 10, 15 of them are there. And you can actually charge them via a wall socket. And since the battery packs are pretty small, it usually takes about 3-4 hours if you're using standard, wall socket plug point. And then if you've got a fast charger, it could be cut into 2 hours. But the truth of the matter is, what does it matter? The vehicle will come, let's say at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. to, the compound, the office of the company. And then they plug it in. And then after 3-4 hours, it gets charged. And then when the first delivery happens, let's say at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., it's ready to go. But even if you want some sort of 24-hour operation, these battery packs only take 3-4 hours to charge. But the beauty of it, this is what I think, again, it goes back to the different use cases, is if let's say your technician, going back to that technician example, is let's say you say you can use this as much as you want on Saturday, Sunday. And when I say use it as much as you want, let him, go 200, 300 kilometers, whatever it is. And then wherever he charges, you can actually say, I'm giving you a top-up card so you can charge at these different charging stations, and it's free. You don't have to pay for it. So all of a sudden, he can do a road trip and not worry about, paying for it, because that also is included in, because it's all done via APIs and working with different charging stations and all the different apps. So that again is another, idea of thinking differently around, how we use these petrol versus EVs. But like I said, on the charging side, it's definitely getting better. But for Bombay logistics or any big city like Delhi or Chennai, there are depots where people will get all of their scooters together and then they can charge it. Now, if we're talking, let's say private, like let's say Ola Electric, they've got the Ola grid. That's also being implemented all over the place. But I think that's that's long term, more for individual retail clients. But I think on the logistics side, that's kind of taken care of. If you look at Domino's, I would imagine they're probably one of the first ones to kind of completely EVify their fleet, because I know where I live, there's a Domino's location that's got about 35 of them just parked on the road. Wow. Now imagine they can take those 35 and put them and start charging them. Then they don't have to worry about taking them, filling up the petrol, getting the receipt, monitoring all of that. There's always a lot of different things happening, and that's all taken care of. It can be done all overnight, and that's the beauty of it. So that is where I think when you look at charging, it's there. There are some, range anxiety is definitely there. But a perfect example would be, let's say Bombay. Let's say someone's starting their delivery, and let's say, all the way in, let's say Nariman Point, and they have to go all the way up to, let's say, the suburbs. Right now, that's an issue. If they have to come back, they may not be able to, find a charging location, but that definitely is getting better. But I think that's where a lot of people are saying, let's look at each of the cities as in hubs, almost like how they have cloud kitchens now. Like, they've got these kitchens that are kind of in the middle of every area, but they're not on the retail location. They're not on the main street. They're probably 3-4 streets in, but they're in the center. And that's the same thing with these charging stations. So I would imagine in Bombay, you could have a big charging hub, let's say in BKC, for all of Domino's. So they all come there, then they can do the maintenance, and then they go back out in the morning to wherever they have to go. And let's say you do have to go all the way from Nariman Point all the way to, let's say, the suburbs. I would say in the next couple of years, you'll see, charging grids even for the, two-wheeler, three-wheelers along the way, and not an issue. But I think range anxiety is much less of an issue for logistics and delivery than it is for people, because people are going out of town. That's the issue when you're going on a four-wheel, you're using a four-wheeler and you're going out of town in a sedan or SUV, is you've got that anxiety. Whereas here, it's not so bad. within a city and you're doing logistics, and you're just going back and forth. And also there's only so much, you know, cargo that some of these carriers can, hold. So then of course they're going to go to the delivery, they'll come back, they'll get a charge. And then while they're charging it, they can fill it up again, and then they go back and forth. So I think that's what's happening, is they've kind of optimized how they can use these vehicles, and they can use them much more, and because also the total cost, gets down, they can actually reuse them. They can kind of, get scooters, more and more of them, because they don't have to spend as much on the total cost of ownership
So tell me
versus the
something.
petrol.
I have one question
Yeah.
around this. You think, in most of Southeast Asia it's already done. Do you think battery swapping for two-wheelers, EV wheelers will become a reality even in India?
So I haven't even touched upon battery swapping, but that is another technology, and that again is another thing that's very unique, is you can do that. So imagine you can have all of your scooters out in the field, and then you just have somebody just go take all the batteries one by one, take them out, and then go charge them and then swap them. And that is also, I think, another one. So what I find is everyone is very, focused on one thing. Oh, battery swapping will never work. You know what? It all depends on the different use cases. Just like, EVs will never work. It's hydrogen fuel cells will never work, or they will work. I think the whole idea is innovations pushing us in 15 different ways, and the market will predict where things will go, or it'll go based on where the market is dictating it. So maybe for an end consumer, will they need battery swapping? Maybe not. But logistics companies, it makes sense, because they can buy a whole bunch of batteries and then charge them and then just quickly put them in there. And I think that is definitely, a point that I didn't even really bring up, because there's so many different technologies that are out there, and that's an example of one.
Amazing. So before we actually wind up, do you want to tell our viewers, who are primarily a lot of the guys who are in the air conditioning services business who's watching this, some names on the EV scooters that they should look at? You're not recommending any, I understand, but just a few names if they want to check out, which they should look at.
Yeah, so there's one that, there's quite a few, and I think that's one of the when there's the dashboard called the Vahan dashboard, which is the government of India has a dashboard where they show all the vehicles that are registered, and it's called Vahan. And in that, when they come out with monthly stats on all the manufacturers, and the biggest one is in the two-wheel space, there's probably literally 50 or 60 manufacturers. What ends up happening is a lot of these guys will go to China, get them, and then import them to India, and then just brand them as their own. And so one of the bigger ones in this space is called Jitendra EV. And that's an example of, a low speed EV two-wheeler. All electrics are usually high speed two-wheelers. So Jitendra EV is one of them. And the minute you type in Jitendra EV in Google, you'll see all the other options that are out there. So, but that's where I would start your Google searches with that. And that's what's great, is it's like somebody was mentioning to me that this is like probably how the US was, Detroit was in the early 1900s. There was like thousands of car manufacturers, and in the end consolidation happened, and then you only end up having 4 or 5. And I think the same thing is going to happen in the EV space, is you've got so many different people manufacturing, rebranding, rebadging, and then in the next 2 to 3 years, maybe we'll come up with maybe only a handful of actually manufacturers that are there in India.
It's amazing. All right, so great. Yep. So I guess that's a lot of information to actually get started on searching on the EVs. But I personally believe, being in the air conditioning business, EV two-wheelers are going to get integrated into our business, and it's going to increase productivity and bring down the cost. So on that note, thank you very much for joining us, and keep writing to us and keep giving us your thoughts on what you would like to know in improving your air conditioning services business. And we'll be happy to talk about it primarily from a technology perspective as to how we've been working, and that's what keeps us going at Pureblu. So if you are an air conditioning services company and you're looking at an online platform to manage your services very efficiently, we've got plenty of them who are using them right now across the country, in fact, even international. That's a number you should call us on, and we will give you a demo on as to how easy it is to operate and how it is domain specific. So it is suited for air conditioning companies. And give us a call, and we'll be happy to give you a demo. On the other front, if you are a large company, or if you're a company that has got multiple locations, all kinds of air conditioners across the country, you can never get one guy to manage all of them. And that's where Pureblu comes in. We are Smart AMC. We are probably the only company that manages all kinds of air conditioners, all types across the country, anywhere in India. And that's where the advantage is. And it's a smart AMC whereby you get IoT device free, which gives you free energy monitoring of your premises that is under maintenance with us for air conditioning. Mind you, a well-maintained air conditioner can drop your energy consumption by 20% because 70% of that energy which you are paying right now every month comes from air conditioners. So that's it. That's about the time that we have for today. So thanks, Manish. That's a lot of information. And I guess we'll see you next month with another topic that's of interest to the business of technology and HVAC. Thank you very much, Manish. See you around.
Thank
See
you.
guys.
That'll
Bye-bye.
be next
Bye-bye.
next month will be episode 17.
Episode 17. That's what it is.
Yep.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.